Hey everyone, ready for the deep dive? Today we're going to tackle something really important, preventing diabetes.
Oh, this is going to be good. I love this topic.
Yeah, and to guide us, we have some awesome insights from Dr. Carlos Jaramillo. He's a doctor with his super popular YouTube channel all about metabolic health.
I've seen his stuff. He's great.
Yeah, he really is. And in one of his videos, he lays out 6 steps to, well, the title translates to 6 steps to never have diabetes.
6 steps. That seems manageable.
Right. And what's really cool is that he challenges some of the conventional wisdom about diabetes, like the idea that it's purely genetic and unavoidable.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that too, that you can't really do much to prevent it if it runs in your family.
Exactly. But Dr. Jaramillo suggests that's actually might be a bit of misinformation.
Interesting. So, are you ready to dive into those 6 steps?
Absolutely. Let's unpack this. Where do you want to start?
Well, I think one of the most interesting things Dr. Jaramillo talks about is debunking the idea that we need to be eating all the time. You know that whole eat every few hours to keep your metabolism going?
I've definitely heard that advice. I even tried it for a while.
Well, he actually argues that it's that constant eating that can set the stage for insulin resistance, which is a major factor in developing diabetes.
Hold on. How does he connect frequent eating to insulin resistance?
He explains it by saying that your body gets kind of resistant to anything it's overexposed to. And that includes insulin.
Oh, okay, I see.
So every time you eat, right, your body's like, boom, insulin to help your cells take in that glucose from the bloodstream. But if you're constantly eating, you're constantly, hitting that insulin button. And eventually your cells are like, ugh, not again. I'm not listening.
They become desensitized.
Exactly. They become less responsive to insulin, and that's what we call insulin resistance. And basically that means your body struggles to regulate blood sugar effectively.
So it's like overworking the system?
Yeah, like you're constantly ringing the doorbell, and eventually nobody's going to come to the door anymore.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So what's the alternative then? Starve ourselves?
No, not at all. It's more about giving your body a break between meals, allowing those insulin levels to settle down. He actually recommends eating 2 to 3 meals a day and giving your body a chance to, reset.
Okay, so not constant snacking. Got it. But I remember Dr. Jaramillo doesn't just stop at debunking the frequent eating myth, right?
Yeah.
He also gets into specifics about certain foods to, steer clear of.
Absolutely. He's very adamant about cutting out sugars, honey, syrups, even artificial sweeteners. Basically anything that, spikes your insulin levels.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So no more sugary sodas or candy bars. But wait, I think he also mentioned something about certain breads being a no-no. Even whole grain varieties.
Yeah, he's not a fan of white bread, of course, but he also suggests being cautious with some whole grain breads too, especially the highly processed ones. It's like thinking a drizzle is the same as a downpour some rain's getting through.
Interesting. So it sounds like he's really advocating for a shift in our overall approach to food, not just focusing on how often we eat, but also what we're putting into our bodies.
Exactly. And that includes building muscle. Like he's a big proponent of strength training and building muscle mass.
Oh, that's right. He does talk about muscles being really important. But how does building muscle help prevent diabetes?
Okay, so think of it this way. Muscles are like glucose guzzlers. They love to use up glucose for energy. So when you have more muscle mass, your body's better equipped to regulate those blood sugar levels because those muscles are like little vacuum cleaners, just sucking up that glucose even when you're not, actively working out.
So the more muscle you have, the more efficient your body is at using glucose, and the less it relies on insulin. Makes sense. But I do remember him also saying something about being mindful of how much protein we eat, right? And that's kind of counterintuitive because usually we think of protein as, the good guy.
Yeah, it is important, but, everything in moderation, right? He explains that our bodies can only use so much protein for, building and repairing tissues. And what happens to the excess protein? It gets converted into glucose.
Oh, so too much protein could actually backfire if you're prone to blood sugar spikes.
Exactly. And he suggests aiming for around 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal. But of course, everyone's different, so, it's always best to consult with a healthcare professional or, a registered dietitian to figure out what's right for you.
Personalized approach. I like it. So we've talked about limiting those frequent meals, being picky with our carbs, pumping some iron for muscle mass, and keeping our protein intake in check. What else does Dr. Jaramillo have up his sleeve for preventing diabetes?
Well, he goes on to talk about the importance of healthy fats. He's not saying to go full keto or anything, but he does emphasize including Plenty of good fats in your diet, like avocados, coconut oil, olives, nuts, seeds, fatty fish, that kind of thing.
He's really challenging that old idea that all fat is bad, isn't he?
Oh, for sure. He really is. It's like he's saying fat is the unsung hero of metabolic health. It's not always in the spotlight, but it's like essential for everything to run smoothly.
Yeah, I like that analogy. So it sounds like he's advocating for a more balanced view of fat, recognizing that it's an important part of a healthy diet, especially when it comes to preventing diabetes.
Absolutely. Fat's essential for hormone production, cell function, nutrient absorption. It's not the enemy it's been made out to be. And it's next.
Let me guess, carbs. Because those always seem to be, the hot topic when it comes to diabetes.
You got it. And this is another area where Dr. Jaramillo encourages us to, rethink those assumptions. He doesn't say to ditch carbs altogether. He just emphasizes choosing the right kinds, like quality over quantity.
Okay, quality over quantity. I'm listening. What does he recommend?
Well, he's all about those veggies, especially leafy greens. They're packed with nutrients and fiber, but don't spike your blood sugar.
Got it. Load up on the veggies. But what about those other carbs, like rice, pasta, potatoes? Are those totally off limits?
He doesn't say you have to completely avoid them, but he does suggest cycling them or, limiting them, especially if you're concerned about insulin resistance.
Carb cycling. I've heard that term before. But can you break it down for our listeners? What exactly does that involve?
So basically, carb cycling means varying your carb intake throughout the week or even the day. You might have days where you eat more carbs, focusing on complex carbs like whole grains and starchy veggies, and then other days where you kind of limit them, sticking to mainly non-starchy veggies.
It's about finding that rhythm that works for you and your body, not just cutting them out cold turkey.
Exactly. It's about paying attention to how different carbs make you feel and finding that balance that supports your metabolic health.
So to recap, we've covered 4 of Dr. Jaramillo's 6 steps. Limiting those meal frequencies, choosing the right carbs, hitting the gym for muscle, and embracing those healthy fats. I'm really curious to hear what the final 2 recommendations are.
Me too. I'm ready to uncover the rest of his secrets to preventing diabetes.
Well, stay tuned because we'll be diving into those final 2 steps in our next deep dive episode. Don't miss it.
Looking forward to it.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We're picking up right where we left off, exploring Dr. Jaramillo's 6 steps to help prevent diabetes. We've already covered 4, so let's get to those last 2, shall we?
Yes, let's. I'm eager to hear what else he recommends.
Me too. So where are we? Yes. Step number 5. It was all about prioritizing high-quality carbs, if I remember correctly.
You got it. And this kind of ties into what we were talking about before with carb cycling. It's not just about the amount of carbs, but also being really choosy about the types we eat.
Right, because carbohydrates, it's a pretty broad term, isn't it?
Exactly. It includes everything from like those sugary snacks and white bread to those fiber-rich veggies and beans, and they don't all affect our blood sugar the same way.
So what does Dr. Jaramillo consider those high-quality carbs? What should we be loading up on?
He's all about those non-starchy veggies, especially leafy greens. They're like nutritional powerhouses, but have a minimal impact on blood sugar. And some fruits, like berries, those are good too. Lower in sugar compared to others.
Gotcha. So it's all about filling half your plate with veggies and then being a bit more strategic about the other carbs you choose.
Exactly. It's not about banishing all carbs, but making informed choices, understanding how they impact your own body.
And this brings to mind the glycemic index and load. Could you explain those a bit more? I think some people might not be familiar with those terms.
Of course. So the glycemic index, or GI, measures how fast a food raises your blood sugar level. High GI foods, they cause a rapid spike, while low GI foods, they're a bit more gradual and sustained.
So even if a food has a high GI, if you only eat a small amount, the overall effect on your blood sugar might not be that drastic.
You got it. And that's where the glycemic load, GL, comes in. It considers both the GI and the amount of carbs per serving, so it gives you a more complete picture.
Okay, so GI tells us how quickly, and GL tells us how much, essentially.
Exactly. Dr. Jaramillo's emphasis on those high-quality carbs, it really aligns with choosing foods that have a lower GI and GL. Like those non-starchy veggies, they have a super low GI and GL, while refined grains and sugary treats, well, they tend to be much higher.
Okay, so that makes sense. But even armed with all this knowledge, it can still be tricky to navigate all those food choices out there, right?
So does Dr. Jaramillo offer any practical advice on how to actually prioritize those high-quality carbs? He does. He suggests visualizing your plate in terms of proportions Aim for about half filled with non-starchy veggies, a quarter with lean protein, and the remaining quarter with healthy fats and, those more complex carbs.
Oh, I like that. A simple visual to guide our choices. But what about those other carbs like rice and pasta and, potatoes? Does he say to completely avoid them?
Not necessarily. He just recommends being mindful of portions and, maybe using that carb cycling approach we talked about.
Okay, so it's all about listening to your body and making those choices that support your metabolic health. All right, on to step number 6. We briefly touched on this before, but let's dive a bit deeper into why he sees these foods as so, well, detrimental to our health.
Ah, yes. Ultra-processed foods. Dr. Jaramillo points out that these foods, they're often engineered to be hyperpalatable, They're loaded with sugar, unhealthy fats, artificial flavors, all those things that kind of hijack our brain's reward system and make us crave more.
So it's not just a matter of willpower then. It's like these foods are designed to be addictive.
Exactly. And beyond their impact on our brains, they often lack those essential nutrients and fiber. And they can mess with our gut microbiome, leading to like system-wide inflammation.
Sounds like he's a big advocate for choosing those whole unprocessed foods whenever possible.
Absolutely. He really encourages people to cook more at home, where you have control over those ingredients. And to read those food labels carefully, watch out for those hidden sugars and additives.
Yeah, because those sneaky ingredients can really add up. It's like playing hide and seek with your health.
He even suggests that one of the most powerful things you can do for your health is to, reclaim your kitchen and rediscover that joy of cooking nourishing meals from scratch.
I love that. It's about taking back that control and prioritizing those real whole foods that support our bodies.
Hmm.
But does he address alcohol at all? We know excessive drinking isn't good for us, but does he give any specific advice when it comes to alcohol and, preventing diabetes?
Yes, he does. He actually compares the metabolic effects of alcohol to those of fructose, which is a type of sugar. He explains that a lot of that alcohol gets processed in the liver, and that can put a strain on it, potentially leading to insulin resistance over time.
So even if we're not talking sugary cocktails, even those drinks like whiskey or vodka, they can still impact our metabolic health.
That's right. It's all about moderation and, being mindful of how alcohol fits into our overall dietary patterns.
And for some, abstaining completely might be the best choice. It really depends on individual goals and health conditions.
Exactly. It's about making informed decisions that align with your personal needs.
Well, Dr. Jaramillo has certainly given us a lot to think about. We've now covered all 6 of his steps: limiting meal frequency, saying no to those added sugars, building some muscle, embracing those healthy fats, picking those high-quality carbs, and ditching those ultra-processed foods.
That's quite a list. But it seems like a holistic approach, It's not just about individual foods or habits, but creating a lifestyle that supports our overall metabolic health.
Definitely. It's a whole body approach. And in our final part, we'll shift gears a bit and talk about some practical strategies for putting these 6 steps into action. Because, knowledge is great, but without action, it's not going to do much.
Okay.
Okay, so we've unpacked Dr. Jaramillo's 6 steps to help prevent diabetes, but now comes the tricky part, actually putting them into practice, right?
Exactly. Because knowing is only half the battle. It's the doing that really counts.
It's like having a gym membership you never use, right?
Right.
Good intention, but without action, it's not going to get you those results.
That's a perfect analogy. So let's talk strategy. How do we bridge that gap between, knowing and doing?
Because let's be real, change can be tough, especially when it comes to like our eating habits and just our overall lifestyle.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest hurdles I see is people feeling overwhelmed. It's easy to get caught up in wanting to change everything at once.
Yeah, like a complete overhaul overnight.
Right. And that's just not realistic. It's like trying to climb Mount Everest in one giant leap.
So what's the more manageable approach? Baby steps.
Exactly. Dr. Jaramillo is a big advocate for that. Focus on one small change at a time, like maybe swap that sugary cereal for a protein-packed breakfast. Or, add in a 15-minute walk each day.
I've heard of that habit stacking thing. Like every time I brush my teeth, I'll do 10 squats.
A perfect example. It's about making those healthy choices so automatic you don't even have to think about them.
But what about those moments when, like, willpower just isn't enough? Like you're at a party and there's all this amazing food, but it's not exactly diabetes friendly.
Ah, yeah, those situations can be tricky. That's where planning ahead really helps. Think about those scenarios in advance and come up with some strategies. Maybe you bring your own healthy snacks. Or you decide beforehand that you'll allow yourself one small indulgence.
It's like having a game plan
Yeah.
instead of just winging it and hoping for the best.
Exactly. And don't forget the power of support. Let your friends and family know about your goals so they can cheer you on. Find a workout buddy, keep each other accountable.
It's easier to stay on track when you've got a team in your corner. But what about those days when, like, motivation just takes a nosedive? We all have those, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's important to be kind to yourself on those days. Setbacks, they're a normal part of the process. You don't run a marathon without hitting a few hills, right?
So don't beat yourself up if you slip up occasionally. Just get back on track and keep moving forward.
Exactly. And celebrate those successes along the way, big or small. Every healthy choice you make is a win.
It's all about those little victories adding up over time. But Dr. Jaramillo, he doesn't just focus on the practical side, right? He also talks a lot about mindset.
Yeah, and that's actually what I find most powerful about his message. It's not about deprivation. It's about empowerment. It's about reclaiming control over your health.
Instead of feeling like you're a victim of your genes or your circumstances, you realize you have the power to make choices that actually shape your health.
It's a complete shift in perspective.
Yeah.
And it makes those healthy choices feel less like sacrifices and more like investments in your future well-being.
It's like choosing to nourish your body, not punish it.
Exactly. And that's a powerful place to come from. So as we wrap up this deep dive into preventing diabetes, I encourage you to embrace that empowered mindset.
Remember, you're not in this alone. And even those small steps, taken consistently, they can lead to incredible results.
So what's one action step you can take today to get closer to your health goals? Write it down, share it with someone, take that first step, and watch what happens.
And remember, the journey to optimal health, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and never underestimate that incredible power you have to create a truly healthy and vibrant life. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into preventing diabetes. We hope you found it informative and inspiring. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.
See you next time.